Um, so our next speaker is Maria, who was also a podcast guest. It's lovely to have you back. Um, yeah, I had the great pleasure of speaking to Maria actually on the Fireside with Voxgeek podcast, and that was a really inspiring chat. Maria is a developer advocate at CubeShop, and where she creates content, builds community, and contributes code to the open source and cloud computing industry. She's passionate about sharing her knowledge and experience with other developers and helping them adopt the best practices and tools for their projects. So conference speaking is a skill she wields to excellent effect. And she's going international by serving as an advisory board member for Dev Network, a platform that connects and empowers developer advocates around the world. But most valuable of all is her ability to spot BS. That's a useful skill. And like recently, she's able to step back from things like social media when they get way too much. Burnout and protective limits is something we've discussed before, and it's an important part of DevRel. Maria, welcome back. Please take it away. Oh, you are muted.
I am muted. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to give you a forewarning. Please do not expect any metrics today. This will just be almost like a campfire storytelling, just talking
Awesome.
about more of the people side of developer relations, and just talking about my story of going from a college student to developer relations. And let me just start with this one picture. So my slideshow is just like a lot of pictures from the past. So let me start with this picture of my school organization, the National Society of Black Engineers. So in this picture, I was a freshman in college. My first semester, I had gotten accepted to the National Society of Black Engineers regional conference. I got a scholarship to go. And if you can see on our faces the joy that's there, and I think in that moment, I really felt like what it was like to be advocated for. And the feeling in this picture is kind of what unintentionally I've led my career with at the core. So like my whole life, I've been advocated for. And in this next stage of my career, currently where I'm at, I'm trying to take that and be an advocate for other people. So just a little bit about my journey. I grew up in DC. Let me stop sharing. I went to school at a predominantly very wealthy school in DC. Did not really fit in the crowd. I was frequently like the only person of color in all of my advanced classes. Unfortunately, I was pushed out of those classes and really felt like I was the only one in a lot of those places. But luckily, I had a good family who could push me to continue engineering. So I never really saw like my gender as an obstacle, more or less. But I just never really saw any Black engineers until I went to college, which is kind of crazy now that I think about it. But just going forward, I started tutoring a lot. I've always loved children and working with children because they're the future. So I started teaching at computer science at USC. So we taught anywhere from kindergarten through 12th grade, Java, Python, HTML. I don't have a picture. I have like one picture of them, but they're minors, so I don't really want to show them. But in that experience, I really learned why I was in engineering. So one thing about USC, we always have these things of like, you're engineering for the world. And in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to engineer to be this, wealthy tech billionaire and have lots of money to do stuff with. But in those experiences where I was putting myself in the shoes of a 7-year-old who had never seen Python before, and all they cared about was getting their Mario game up and running, and really connecting to that core part of no, this is what tech is for, not all of the glory and not all of the Mark Zuckerbergism that came around when I was growing up. So I unintentionally were taking these little lessons with me. Additionally, after lots of rejections from from Google and all those big companies, I decided to do that full time in the summer. And there, I really delve into education from all backgrounds. So instead of just, kids who were professors' kids who had resources at home, I had the opportunity to work with developers who didn't have computers at home, who that was the first time they'd ever, dealt with engineering challenges ever. And it really tested and transformed the way I viewed like computer science. I think I used to think of computer science as this, like wholly untouchable thing where only a select group of people had access to it or should have access to it. But no, I learned that if it's just the way that it's taught. So with that lesson, I've taken that today into a lot of the content that I write now. Like I have a grandma test where if my grandma can't pick up a few concepts from it, then it wasn't a good article. Yeah, I mean, just that lesson of like constantly being an advocate for other people and constantly showing up for, developers who don't see themselves in the spaces around them. I think it's been a focal point of, I guess, my career. And I'll show you another picture here. But I guess one question I have for the audience is, I know there's a lot of engineers here, but have you ever, felt like you didn't belong in the space or the team that you are? Or when you started your company, did you ever feel like, ooh, maybe they hired the wrong person, or maybe I'm not as, I don't belong as a senior engineer? I'd like to hear that story because I feel like a lot of times in this space, there's not a lot of opportunity to talk about that kind of stuff. And I think that's the core of developer relations. I mean, wow, I feel like I'm talking to myself. That's the core of developer relations where you...
You're not. We're here.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm muted.
Okay, great.
Virtual is so weird that way.
Great. I thought the chats would come fast. Let me show you some more pictures. Okay. So yeah, those are the kids that I taught. So they learned anything from Python to cybersecurity. But I wanted to go back to the thought of, have you ever felt like you didn't belong at the team that you're in? And I wanted to ask the group, have you ever felt like that?
I'll go first on that one. I've been coding, being paid to write code for 26 years. But my first degree wasn't in computer science, and I was very lucky to get a job in 1997 building websites. And 1 month into the job, I was in such a panic over just lack of computer science knowledge that I signed up for another degree. I put myself through 4 years of night school. I already had a degree. I put myself through 4 years of night school to get another degree in computer science because I felt like such an imposter. And I see it with so many junior devs that I've worked with over the years. And yet, after 26 years, almost everything that you need to know to do this job, you learn on the job by doing, not by studying. And I think it's okay not to know, and it's okay. One of our engineers recently spent an entire week beating their head against a brick wall, getting nowhere with a particular technical challenge, and felt terrible about it. But I said to them, it's 100% okay. That's normal. Normal for a senior. It's normal for an architect, right? That's part of the job. So yes, the answer to your question, Maria, is yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and just hearing your stories, just like kind of bringing home what I guess the point of this whole thing is that the core of this job is to take shame out of technology, take shame out of learning. I mean, I've always been told that like everybody has their own journey and everybody has their own way of learning things. So I think, the role that, everybody here has is to find a way to spin, whether it's, AI, developer tooling, cloud infrastructure, and put it in a way that it's accessible to somebody. So maybe that's not the right corporate answer, but I feel like my success is when when I get feedback from students and they tell me, "Oh, Kubernetes, you made it make sense to me for the first time. I've been hearing it for so long, and it made sense to me for the first time." So I think that's all of all the things that I've learned that have brought me to my career as a developer advocate have always been outside the classroom, or the experience of sitting in a library with somebody and we're reading the same notes, but we interpreted 2 or 3 different things from it. And I think also just that experience of, being othered has really opened my eyes to, all of how much work we have to do in this industry. So even just talking about documentation. So the way that documentation is it written for somebody who is a beginner, or is it written in the perspective of a senior engineer who just expects to, pick this up on a weekend or a night as a hobby? So I think having empathy and advocacy in the core of everything that we do, it may not be, and actually, no, I would say it's profitable because it's about how you make somebody feel. So I love Flux because I remember how it made me feel in that workshop to learn about continuous deployment for the first time. And I will always be an advocate for it. Or I love Pandas because that was my first foray into building my own data pipeline from scratch, and the way that it made me feel and the accessibility that it gave me. So empathy and advocacy is the way to profitability, I think, and it can be in this field. So what I just wanted to say is that in my journey to DevRel, yes, I'm talking about the perspective of a college grad, but a lot of the things I learned was not intentional. It was not a part of my course. So I never studied computer science. I studied industrial and system engineering. So I was always studying something else. The computer science kids looked really sad, actually. They they looked really miserable. So I went with the teachers that were offering in and out during study hall, which for non-Californians, it's a burger, basically, like fast food.
But Maria, sorry to interrupt, but your point on documentation just struck a chord with me, and I just started thinking actually about recipes and like long-term relationships. Again, coming back to Kelly's talk and that, and there are 2 classic, famous chefs over on this side of the world, Delia Smith and Mary Berry, and they're like ancient and absolutely classic because their cookbooks assume no prior knowledge. They are step by step. You pick it up, and no matter what equipment you have, or no matter what prior knowledge you have, you can create something that is edible. And that respect for their user has been very profitable for both of them, Maria. So I think you've nailed it. The respect for your reader. And I think I'm not an engineer, and from the outside looking in, I get frustrated about the attitude towards documentation sometimes, that it's like, well, it's almost beneath somebody to actually have to write it, because why doesn't everybody just know what I'm doing and understand it? So that would be my tip. But I get it, Maria, and I actually think it's really healthy to have external eyes, in a sense, or fresh eyes looking at it, and I think that's hugely valuable for the whole sector. My two cents worth.
Right. But I have to, just one correction. You are an engineer, because at the core of engineering is problem solving. And if you solve problems, you are an engineer.
Richard, I'm an engineer.
I've been an engineer since I was a toddler. So it's not the degree. It's the fact that you solve problems.
Thank you, Maria.
Sinead, you got the streaming platform to work, despite it not wanting to work. So
Yeah. But I mean, even in these like layoff times, so I was very lucky to start my job in 2022. So I started developer advocacy by accident. I was watching YouTube and I didn't want to go back to class. And my favorite YouTuber, Bricola, she was a developer advocate at Google. And once again, talking about like being able to see yourself in engineers, she was this Nigerian engineer. And I'm Nigerian, and I was like, perfect, let me apply. And they saw my background in education, and they saw that I could teach, Python to 7-year-olds. So that means you could teach 35-year-old men how to do cloud infrastructure, which, you know what, still tracks. And I think I was very blessed to start at a good time. But I think for people in the audience who are trying to get into developer relations or are trying to recover from layoffs, I think my advice in this trying to be empathetic and respect for the user is, number one, being an advocate doesn't have to be your title, but you can still be an advocate. So even though it might not be the title of developer relations or technical writer or developer evangelist, you can still find ways to be an advocate in your space, and by building those relationships. So, for example, through open source, building those relationships by working on open source projects, redoing documentation on different projects. That could be a way to find meaning in your job outside of writing code. Number two is just like visibility. So here's my story about that. So I did a drone conference last weekend, and I was selected for that drone conference because I did a live stream in my bedroom last minute, the day before classes started, about how frustrating it was to install the software. And I closed my computer. I said, nobody's going to watch that. Forget about it. And then 9 months later, I'm at that conference, and they said, I came to your talk because I remember watching your live stream. And he was one of the 10 views, and it was the head of the whole open source software department. And so even just me expressing my frustrations, I did not reinvent the wheel. I did not, write a super complex plugin. All I did was show my installation. And through there, I was a recognizable figure and offered the opportunity to speak at this drone conference. So visibility is so important. And then third, just like respect for the user, as Richard said. Yeah, feedback, exactly. Respect for the user. So putting yourself in the perspective of the hiring manager, I think, is important. So we always talk about, customer, but we're not always thinking about, okay, who is the person who is like, how am I going to add to the team? So do you add to the team because you can take a complex concept and make it simple? Do you add to the team because you are very detailed oriented and you can write lots of documentation? Do you add to the team because you can make fun videos to make all these tech concepts interesting and viable? So finding your strength and like running with that, I think, is my advice to people who are trying to, get back on their feet in this tough climate. So those three things, I think, are the best way of going back about it. And like coming to spaces like these, meeting people in different industries. So I am working in the Kubernetes space. So I'm all about Kubernetes right now. So if you ever want to talk to me about Kubernetes, I'm there. Yeah. So to go back to the journey, I've always focused on the people part. So as you can see, there's not one piece of technology mentioned in this slide. I'm not going to tell you about my tech stack. I'm not going to tell you about what my GitHub portfolio looks like. But I think my career is based on the communities and people that I've impacted. So whether that's the SpinnerCare community that I was able to help, improve their installation process, or currently the BotCube and KubeShop community where I'm I'm helping, making developer tooling and Kubernetes troubleshooting more accessible, or it's, a 7-year-old in Compton, giving them exposure to computer science for the first time. That is the most important part of the journey. And that's how I got here today. Just really focusing on finding ways that I can be an advocate for others. And maybe in 5 years from now, if I ever get invited back, I'll be able to talk about how in the next journey, I was able to be an advocate for mentoring developer advocates, or be an advocate by, building cool products that are able to take that empathy to scale. But I just want to say that empathy and relationships are just, the core of what we're doing. And I feel like, especially in this tech Twitter world, that's why I kind of got off of it. People always focus on these tools every day, but that's not really the case. It's what are the problems I'm solving and who am I helping? And I think by following that of being advocated for as a small, freshman, and now taking that feeling and being an advocate for other people has led me to where I am today. And hopefully you can learn from that and learn that being a developer advocate is it's challenging, but anybody can do it. I think anybody. You just have to care about everybody else, which is.
Maria, thank you so much. I think this subject of
Thanks.
empathy and coming at things from thinking about having empathy with your users, with the developers using your system, it's really resonating. We can see that even in the comments. So I think for me, that's kind of one of the most important topics coming out of the talks this evening. Thank you so much to both of our speakers. Really, really fascinating talks. Great stuff. This is, of course, recorded, so we'll be able to share that as well. And we are right on time. Wow. Awesome stuff. Well done, speakers. That's very efficient and disciplined. Okay, next meetup is going to be on Wednesday, November 22nd. So the week before Thanksgiving, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Dublin, London time. And we'll be announcing the speakers shortly. Thank you again to contentful.com, our lovely sponsors. And thank you again to our wonderful speakers, Kelly and Maria, and of course, Sinead, who actually makes it all happen, and our audience. Thank you so much. Have a great day and evening.
Thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Bye.